Okay, our next speaker is the wonderful Margaret Boersma from Toronto in Canada. She is the founder and CEO of Creative Education in Action, and we are so lucky to have her here today talking about anxious students. Hi there, Margaret.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So before we start, what I'd love to ask you is, what do you see are the current challenges in the education system that you're seeing?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question I could spend the whole talk on.
I know, just a couple of things.
Well, to start with, there's even before the pandemic, and it's just gotten worse. Children are extremely anxious, and we don't know as teachers how to deal with that. Our youth are going through a lot. The longer the lockdowns last in different parts of the world, the worse things are getting. So those are the biggest challenges right now, far and beyond academics.
Actually, it's interesting that you say that the anxiety is affecting young people, because actually I'm seeing it more and more in so many different people. I'm seeing it in parents, I'm seeing it in teachers, I'm seeing it in people outside the education system as well. It's like a wave of anxiety. People are having panic attacks, people are really experiencing anxiety, and they have no idea where it's coming from. So, or why it's starting. So I think that this is a really important talk, not just for thinking of students, but for thinking about ourselves, for thinking about those people around us and so on. Yeah. So what's one thing that you wish you'd learnt at school, thinking particularly of anxiety? What's one thing you wish you'd learnt?
I think I wish that the adults in my life had said, it's okay, it's not your fault. There are so many times when we, as children are very egocentric, and youth are as well. And we blame ourselves as young adults even, for things that happen in our environment. We think it's our fault. And what it really needs is an aware parent or teacher or leader to say, it's not your fault. This is not about you. This is about mom and dad, or this is between us, and you're hearing this, and it's not about you. Even that one line, I wish I had heard when I was younger, because we didn't have the most emotionally stable household. And there was stuff that happened that I blame myself for all the time. And that's our makeup as children. And all we sometimes need to hear is, this isn't your fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we can
a really powerful line. Yeah, a really, really powerful line. This isn't your fault. So children you're seeing are more anxious now than ever. Do you have any thoughts, or you do have some thoughts about why this might be the case?
Yes, I think, well, even before the pandemic, for a number of years, I would say even a couple of decades, as parents, we got almost, maybe not at a conscious level, but at a subconscious level, we became a bit competitive. We wanted our newborns to be everything they could possibly be. And so we enrolled them into everything we could possibly enroll them in. And we made their lives scheduled from the beginning of the day to the end, or we had them in daycare where they had scheduled programs, and they're programmed to death. And in the pandemic, there's another set of stuff that's happened because of lockdowns and that. But even, I think that children don't have enough playtime. And it's interesting because that's how children work things out, in their spontaneous play, when they are generating the ideas from within and they're not in front of a screen getting input. So as adults, we work through things in a different way. Some of us are very talkative. We need to speak things out in order just to hear ourselves think and to come up with our own answers. And we just need a committed friend to do that sometimes. And some of us don't have that, and that can cause a lot of anxiety. But with children, they need a chance to play, just to generate and act out, and not act out, but spontaneously work out what their mind is thinking about. And that provides release. And I think as parents, over the years, we have been well-intentioned, but we haven't allowed children the time they need to work things out through their play.
Because it's through their play that they work out more about who they are as well. It's not just solving the problems that they're facing, but it's finding out who they are and what they're enjoying and what their interests are and how to learn and all of those sorts of things, isn't it, that they're doing through that?
It is, definitely is, yeah.
One of our child theorists in New Zealand, I think her name was Gwen Somerset, she talked about play being a child's work.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Play is a child's work.
Mm.
That's why we have kindergartens and preschools set up with play structures everywhere. And I don't know what it's like in New Zealand, but here in Canada and in Ontario, the play structures, and you have 2 years for that. And when you get to be 6 years old and in grade 1, all that goes away and the focus is on academics. And to be honest, it's even gotten that way in the kindergarten years. So it's the structures are there, but the kids don't get enough play time.
Yeah, we do have a lot more free play, if you like, in our early childhood centres, in most of the early childhood centres. But we are seeing as the students approach the age of 5, because we start school at 5 in New Zealand, some early childhood centres do have that schoolification, if you like, as they're preparing students for school, and they have the structured times and things like that. Another thing that we're seeing in New Zealand is some of the primary schools heading towards play-based learning, which is an interesting thing. So part of the day, there will be the opportunity for play. And that's meant huge learning for the teachers, because they're having to learn about what might learning look like. What are we looking for if we set up this environment? How do we know that these children are learning? So there's been a lot of work in that space. There's still a long way to go to be able to.
We have play-based learning now as well in the kindergarten grades, junior and senior kindergarten. And it was a big learning for the teachers to be able to get their minds around it. But the sad thing is there's no continuity into the older grades.
Yeah, and that continuity, that transition is one of the hard things, isn't it? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a huge big topic that we're talking about here. We're wanting children to be able to play, to be able to explore, to be able to find out who they are, to know that they are enough, that these strengths and so on are who they are, and to be able to bring that through. Now, we're seeing teachers, administrators, parents, we have all got so much on our plates. And I know that so many people are saying, but there's more, we're having to do more and more. And so much a part of this, we're seeing burnout, we're seeing overwhelm, which is also feeding into this anxiety. So as I'm working with teachers as well, I'm seeing that we have to help them fix themselves or help themselves first. What can we do? What are some of the strategies that could help us while dealing with ourselves, while dealing with the people that are around us?
Yeah. So I think I hear your question, and we need specific strategies, don't we, as adults, to deal with ourselves so that we're able to support the kids, right? And one thing that we tend to do as adults often is to blame, right? So we blame the government for imposing whatever they impose, and therefore we're feeling stressed, and we blame our spouse for coming home and taking his feelings out on us, or we're always in the blame game, and it really increases our anxiety. We have to realize that we are 100% responsible for how we experience life. And the other person we may live with, or we may, have as a colleague or whatever, is 100% responsible for how they experience life. And we shouldn't take that on either. We can be there for them, but there's a difference. There's a line there between being a committed colleague and taking on the stress from another. And if we do that, if we take on someone else's stress, we're not able to be there for them anymore, because we burn out. And when we burn out, anybody that's in our charge doesn't have a hope to get anything from us, because burnout is real.
Yes.
I've been there several times in my
Mm.
career. It's real. So that's first. Own it, right? And know that you're responsible. And for me, when I started getting that, it was like, okay, so if that's true, so then I had to figure out if that's true, but at least it gave me something to think about, right? It's like, oh, things could be different if I had a different mindset. So that's a mindset, right? And there's a famous American business philosopher, and I love his quote. It's Jim Rohn. He says, "You must take personal responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself." And so many of us are reluctant to turn the mirror towards ourselves. And I think it's critical that we do. We can't expect change until we do that, right? So here's an example. We can work really hard to lose weight, or we can work really hard to keep it off. Either way, it's a lot of work. We can blame the government for how they handle the pandemic, but it doesn't help us get to a better place. So I have this little formula that I use, and it goes like this. There's an event, then you add the meaning, and that equals your behavior, which equals your result. And it sounds really simplistic, but I'm going to do it with an example. All right. So for example, the event is someone says to you, and it might be your principal, your reports have to be in on time. Okay. What you make it mean, now meaning is thought followed by feeling. So you make it mean, oh, he's such a stickler. That's your thought. All right. And then you feel disempowered and deflated. So all he said is have your reports in on time. You made it mean that he's being a stickler. So that's other people are impacting you negatively. And so you feel disempowered and deflated. And therefore your behavior is you procrastinate. And in the end, you panic and your reports are late. So that's a chain of events when we start not taking 100% responsibility for how we perceive things, for example, right?
And to do that, we need to be really aware of our thoughts, don't we? We actually need to start thinking about what we're actually thinking and build that awareness in.
That metacognitive piece, right? Yeah. It's critical because what we think. So here's another thing. When we vent to other people, right? We're venting about what we're thinking. It's okay to do that with one or two trusted people, but don't do it any more than that, because if you do, you are creating this pathway in your brain, and it's a negative pathway. And if you want to have a quality day, you want to make it a positive pathway. So how do you do that? You have to replace the thought with a positive thought. So something that you're grateful for is a great way to do it, and speak that out to your friend. I have a friend who won't let me go past saying what I needed to say. If I go into any more detail or depth, she turns around, and this is hard to take, and she says, so what's positive that happened in your life today? And it's like an abrupt and a jar, like, ugh. But there's something to it. Like, I love her intention. It's not smooth either. It's pretty jarring. And I'm not sure that I do it the same way, but I love the intention behind it. And we can always be grateful for something. Like, I'm grateful that, I can share a beautiful walk with my husband, even though it's COVID and everything's locked down for 14 out of 16 months here. I'm grateful that the sun is shining and it's summer now. I know that I shouldn't say that with you there, but I'm grateful that I got to teach students virtually, to stay with my hand in I love to make sure that every year I get some teaching in, and I taught social emotional learning through drama virtually, 16 hours of it. And oh my goodness, I learned so much about what teachers are going through right now. So that, and those children on the other side of the screen, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Anyways,
Yeah.
So,
It's a huge
that
it is a
answers your
huge thing,
question.
isn't it? Yeah. And so one of the things that I'm hearing you say, which is a common thread through that, is that awareness of our thoughts and taking, that we realizing that we have a choice every single day. And that's quite a powerful thing in and of itself. And I'm not sure whether you've heard about one of the tools that we use is talking about above the line and below the line behavior. Have you heard about that? Above the line behavior is taking ownership, taking accountability, and taking responsibility, which all has positive outcomes. It's not easy, but it's that realization. Can I take ownership? How can I take ownership? Am I accountable for something? How can I take responsibility? Versus blame, which you talked about, excuses, denial. And so being able to be aware, am I saying but, or I'm sorry, or, those sorts of things.
I have a beautiful chart on that. I don't think I heard of it as above the line and below the line, but the chart is, I got it off the internet, and it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah, perfect.
It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So, okay, what do you suggest that we do about the anxiety of our young people?
Well, I think we need to teach them age-appropriate lessons in the kind of things we were just talking about. So I do that. I do that in schools, and I make it fun. I integrate academics and drama and movement and music and visual arts, because those are the expressions of a child, and it feels like play to them. And so I wondered at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really feeling for those kids who are home all the time, and what could we do? And so I created this video series, and maybe your listeners have heard about it. There are 5 or 6 lessons on there, just 20-minute lessons. And they teach things like putting words to your emotions, how to deal with bad feelings, how to deal with overwhelm, and how to develop a growth mindset, how to see something from someone else's perspective. Those kinds of tools, they're really tools that we all need. And in training staff at school, they can train the students then as well and reinforce those lessons that I call deep learning at home. That's the series. But every lesson is based on a rich text picture book. And every lesson has an affirmation, which is another strategy that's really good, is affirming yourself. And when I create the affirmations for the lessons, I make sure that they rhyme, they're in rhythm, because one day I want somebody to put a tune to it, and we put actions to it, and all those things help kids remember. And then they have to go out and share their affirmation with their people at home, whoever they are. I'll read some of them to you if you're interested.
Okay. Yeah, 2 or 3, that'd be great.
Yeah. So even adults need affirmations, and you need to say those to yourself, because this is your thought life, right? So if you're aware of your thought life, it's amazing how negative it can be. And you can change that and then have a much better day, even though the circumstances don't change. So here's one. Whether my feelings are big or small, my words can help to say it all. So that's lesson 1. Use your words. Kids are really good at temper tantrums, and we don't need to hear anything. We know what they're saying. It's their dance in that moment. But we always tell our kids, use our words. So you have to develop the vocabulary with them. And that's what these lessons are about as well. I let myself feel the pain, dance it, draw it, and feel good again. That's about how to deal with feelings. Heavy things that drag me down, when broken up, are turned around. That's a lesson on overwhelm. What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed? And it's so good. It's based on Whimsy's Heavy Things. That's the picture book it's based on. And the illustrator made the heavy things concrete metal balls that are hanging around her neck and dragging her down. So it's such a good analogy of what it feels like when we're so weighed down, right? Yeah. Here's another one. Listen to others and what they say. Be curious to see another way. That's on perspective training.
Yeah, and that's really powerful, isn't it, for helping people to look at the people around them and realize that they're different, but they're human, just like you are, and they come with their strengths, which is one of the other things that's so important in this world at the moment, isn't it? As we
Yeah.
go forward from here, is
Oh, yes.
understanding not
We
only of
have to be
ourselves.
able to take our own lenses off and crawl behind the perspective of the other person to really understand them. Otherwise, we end up coming at loggerheads with each other. And then there's no understanding, and both people feel miserable. And it's not helpful. One person, and this is where the 100% responsibility comes in. One person has to take that initiative. Well, let me really hear what you're saying. And if you don't understand what they're saying or why they're saying what they're saying, you have to ask and then be open to listen. I have a fantastic activity I want to do with you in a little bit if we have time. That will answer that. And that will show how to really listen to somebody.
Sure.
And
Okay.
it's an exercise we can do it, with staff. We can do at home. Parents can do it with their youth, and yeah, it's really good.
That active listening is really important, isn't it? Okay, so another thing that many teachers are facing is a rise in aggression. And so what do we do as teachers in classes or as parents when our children are having a complete meltdown? They're aggressive or they're completely shut down. What can we do?
Yeah. Well, we need to make sure that everyone else is safe. Move the furniture out of the way. Let them have their meltdown. That is not the time to ask a kid, what are you thinking? Or why are you doing that? Even when they're partly calmed down, we have to be so careful not to ask them, why are you doing that? Because their amygdala is engaged. That means that they're in survival mode. They have no clue to the answer to that question. Why did you do that? Instead, we need to do that reflective listening that I was just speaking about. And that might take several rounds. And when they finally are calm, and maybe even removed from the situation, go for a walk down the hall with you or with somebody else, a trusted adult, then you can ask the question, what were you thinking just before you did that? Because that's where the teaching can come in. Once they get aware of their thoughts, oh, maybe what you said reminded me of what happened at home this morning when, and then I got really mad. Okay, so then you can take it from there, right? And they start seeing a pattern, and that will help reduce those meltdowns. But I think you really need that trusted adult. And in the moment of the meltdown, you just have to see that physical safety is key.
Yeah, and I can hear it has to be a trusted adult, doesn't it? It has to be
Oh.
somebody that's genuinely listening and is genuinely concerned about that person, and they need to know that they're not going to be judged and that they're going to be cared for and that they're going to be safe by sharing this stuff. Because
Yes.
when we
It
share our
can't be someone who flies off the handle. Like if it's the teacher who's easily dysregulated, I guess is a word you could say, right? If they are going to be angry and also have their own adult kind of meltdown, that does not work. And
Yeah.
that's why we as teachers need to do the work.
Absolutely.
This work.
Absolutely, because otherwise we can't, we have to model it as well. We have to live it every day. And it helps us as well, as people, as teachers, as parents, as people in the world, doesn't it? So let's work through that example. So what's the example that you wanted me to use? Is it being anxious about an assignment that I've got coming up? I'm really anxious about.
Like what are you anxious about, Cathy?
Oh.
It doesn't have to be in your real life present time. It could be something that happened before, maybe as a teacher or as a parent, something that made you feel maybe anxious or overwhelmed. And maybe you're complaining to me. Say I'm your best friend and you've just had it with something.
Yeah, so it could be a conversation that I have to have with somebody, and it's a difficult conversation and I don't want to have it. So that could be.
Yes, as long as you feel safe sharing it right now. I want you to be sure that you're okay with that.
It's a really common situation that I experience and many others around me experience as well. Those difficult conversations that we have to have with anybody. It is certainly an anxiety producing thing. So
All right. So imagine that you're saying something to me about it, and you have to get yourself into that feeling a little bit so that your expression is matching and your tone is matching what you're telling me. A rant or a complaint, a 1-line or 2-line thing.
I've got to have this conversation with this person on Friday, and I don't know how it's going to go. I'm really worried about it.
All right. It sounds to me like there's something in your space about this conversation that you'll have to have with somebody, and your worry is making you feel almost numb. That's what I'm sensing in your tone. Is that right?
No, it's causing me anxiety in a way, and it's affecting the way that I'm sleeping. So I can't sleep because I'm thinking about it at night.
That brain that won't turn off. Oh my goodness, yes. So
all the what ifs, you know, what if it goes like this? What if it goes like that? What if it goes like the other?
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
What if? And at night, especially, it's the worst time, right? Because there's lots of space, lots of time to think, lots of worst case scenarios coming to the surface. And it's not the time to really feel like you can problem solve, right? So, and even in the daytime, you're regurgitating it. It sounds like it's really affecting your daytime when you let it. It seems to me you have good control over when that happens and when that doesn't, because you're very good at being present.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's come through practice, hasn't it? And through one of the things that I've been practicing for many years is detachment. So being able to detach myself from the situation, because I do care deeply about people. I care deeply about the outcomes for them in lots of different things. But again, it comes back to if we pour ourselves into that, then we lose our ability to be able to support the other person. We lose our ability to be able to think at that time, to think constructively, and we're much more likely to burn out in that situation.
Sure.
Yeah, and so being aware.
It's a strategy that you have.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it is. It is.
All right. And so when you do that detachment, I sense that you were doing that when you first told me what was up. And that's what I thought was numbness. Yes. But maybe you were practicing detachment because you didn't really want to go there in your example.
It's funny because I had a mentor that worked with me for a number of years, and she uses a series of cards called the Virtues cards, and they're absolutely fantastic. And at the beginning of every session, we would pull out one card, and 5 times in a row over the space of a year and a quarter, every time it was detachment out of 100 cards. And so it was a lesson that I learnt.
Yes. Wow.
time and time again, and it has served me very well. And yes, there's times when I do need to come back and revisit that again, but you can see how powerful the strategies that you're talking about are for helping us to be able to get through the difficult situations in our lives, is finding those strategies so that we can stay true to ourselves, that we can manage our emotions, that we can not let it consume us, because that's something else that's happened in the night, is that I don't go, oh, I'm not sleeping, oh, I'm not sleeping, oh, I'm not sleeping, etc. It's just like, okay, I'm awake, that's okay. And so almost detaching myself from that as well. So, and it's not that I'm going through life numb, because I absolutely care about people, but this is not something that happens overnight. This is something that, you know, you're talking before about those patterns in our brains. Yes. This is something that we need to continually work on. And it's hard. And it's not the stuff that can be easily tested in tests. And it is who we are as people. And that's what you're talking about, working with teachers, with parents, with young people, with everybody in the world, isn't it?
Yes. And that's what gives us the ability to work to our learning potential every year at school. That's what gives us the ability to relate to others in a workplace where we can actually keep our jobs. So many young people are not keeping their jobs, not because they don't have the skills for the job, because they don't have those interpersonal skills and those self-regulation skills. And that's what you're talking about. And in the example we just did, just to go back to that for a second, I was trying to paraphrase what you said and at the same time acknowledge your feelings. And when we have a heated situation with someone, that's the best way to get them to calm down. And it takes several rounds sometimes. But to do that in real life takes a lot of practice. It's like developing a muscle, right? It's those pathways in the brain is the same thing. We're developing a brain muscle. And we need to be very conscious without getting roped into a recurring dialogue that we have with that spouse of ours or whatever, you know. We really need to be conscious of, no, I'm going to understand and I'm going to use this methodology. Because when we get activated, it's hard to think about the script we're supposed to use. So it takes practicing in a calm situation to do it. It really does.
Yes. And what you've got there is the power of acknowledging emotions, the power of being aware of our own emotions. One of the things that I'm seeing in teachers that I'm working with is almost like a fear of getting it wrong when we are labeling somebody else's emotions. But what I've seen is that you asked me, was I numb? Right? And what it did was it gave me the option or the opening to be able to say, no, it's not that, it's this. And so that fear of getting it wrong can be something that it makes us close our mouths and not identify the emotion aloud. But what we're actually doing is enabling that opening of the emotional space. And then you've got the acknowledgement of the emotions, which then enables people to work through it. And I think so many people are scared of those strong emotions, aren't they? Whether it's excitement or with, excitement and those sorts of things, they're the really positive emotions that people are much more, some people, a lot of people are happier with. Whereas it's the ones that make us feel very uncomfortable that people are scared of and that don't want to acknowledge.
That's why we need to be curious. If we didn't get it right the first time, be curious. Oh, so it's not that. So what is it? It's detachment. Like I was asking you, what am I hearing in that? To me, it sounds like numbness. And then you were able to say, well, I trained myself to detach, right? And so I think sometimes if we don't get it right the first time, that's okay. What we need to get right is to be curious. That's the part we need to get right. We can't read someone else's mind and we can't really know what their feelings are. Yes, they express it and we can guess at it, and it sounds like, and you know what's even more supportive is when somebody's super upset and there's something unjust about it. And as the listener, you're able to get angry with them. That is so supportive. You don't deserve that. That's ridiculous. If somebody said that to me when I was like on it about something, I'd feel so supported, right? So and then it's not a matter of finding the right words. It's the right tone and the right being present.
Yes. And then it's what happens after that, isn't it? Because what happens after that is, and this is where the detachment comes in as well, is because we want to fix things for somebody. So we want to either help them and do the stuff for them so that they don't have those feelings, or we want to tell them what to do. And this is where this detachment has been so powerful, because their problem is not my problem to solve. And if I try and solve it or tell them what to do, then I'm getting sucked into it as well. And that's where I can care deeply about what's happening and I can support them. It's like getting in the hole. I've heard people talk about getting in the hole with them and helping them to climb up the ladder out of it, as opposed to pushing them up the ladder or telling them how they need to climb out of it, which doesn't work. And
no, it doesn't. No, you're so right. And this is why it takes training, not a one-off workshop session. It really takes training to be able to do this well. And that's what's needed, that training, right? So when both people are calm, okay, so here's what happens. When the person who was initially activated feels heard and understood, the emotional temperature comes down. And there's a space created where the other person gets to say their opinion. in a calm way. All right. And if that's not needed, if it's totally on the other person, great. But often there's this person who was curious in the first place needs to say something as well. And that space only gets created once that emotional temperature is lower. When both people are low, then you can move on to the next step, which is, what are you going to do about it? Right? And that's what you were talking about.
Yeah. Because then that's giving that person the power. It's, what are you going to do about it? How does it fit in your life? Is it something small that doesn't matter? Is it something that you need to do something about? And I come back to, choose the battles that you're going to fight and so on.
Yeah.
Or choose to let it go, but it's not for me to tell them that it's something that they need to let go or something that they need to fight about. It's exploring with them.
And we need to believe, I think we need to really believe that each one is capable of solving their own problems. If they want your advice, they'll ask specifically for it and make them ask at least twice, because unsolicited advice is not welcome, usually. So we have to be aware of that, right?
And so then you're creating an environment within classrooms, within schools, within early childhood centres across the world, because what we're talking about now is ongoing life learning, isn't it? As opposed to what people thought was education was within the education system. But we're talking about people in the world now. And so it's part of a much wider system, if you like, of ongoing learning.
Yeah,
and you're talking about a problem. Yeah, you're talking about a problem-solving culture. We're creating a problem-solving culture where we are empowering each person around us to be able to bring our strengths and our way of solving problems to the world. I mean, this is a huge conversation.
A little piece of it.
just little pieces, eh? So just, one classroom at a time, one person at a time, one family at a time, where you're creating this problem-solving culture. And it might be through those conversations at dinner, right? What are you going to do about that? I've had some great conversations at dinner time with my kids, and one of my sons, his first answer to any problem is always punch them in the face, right? So it's always the first answer, punch him in the face. Another son, his answer is, yeah, whatever, right? My husband's answer, he's got two. The first one is go to bed earlier. And the second one is take a jacket. So, once you get these first responses out of the way, which always bring in a few laughs, another option is always do nothing. But, it helps you to see that there's more options, doesn't it? What's your option? Punch him in the face. Okay, right. What's something else that you could do? And that, starts to bring in the fun with it as well. And fun helps to lighten the mood and helps us to be able to think more clearly and enjoy the process of this, because learning can be pretty blooming hard at times.
Yeah. Especially when we take things personally, and we could learn not to, like you just talked about, right? And then life would be, so much simpler, I think, and so much, I'm still learning. I still get activated once in a while, but honestly, I went through years of training, and now I can't wait to give it to others, because my happiness quotient went from here to here. It's incredible. Yeah,
that's right. That's the same with me, actually, that through this I've been able, it's almost like I have a joy that is part of my life almost all the time, and that's pretty special. And I want that for other people as well. So you've got a way of supporting people with daily trainings in SEL. Can you share that with us, please?
Well, I'm getting schools that are wanting my complete program first, which is really cool. I have a larger year-long program, but I also have a 9-week program, and it's best if the staff take it and then the parents take it at the same time, and there's a children's program that goes with it. So imagine, even after 9 weeks, 9 one-hour sessions, the whole community, the school community, has the same language, the same problem-solving strategies, the same mindset strategies, the same self-care strategies. And imagine that they're all set up with committed colleagues, like a buddy who actually has their back, checks in on them every day and says, how are you feeling? And then gets curious. And that's what I'm doing in schools now. And I love it. I love it. And different principals want me to work more of the artsy and in a deep and meaningful way because their teachers don't know how to do that. But it's all social emotional learning, and I build in the academics too. So it's not just an add-on, which teachers feel like they can't afford an add-on because there's so much time constraint in a school system, the way it's set up. I have another whole topic on that, but I won't go there right now. So, and the other thing is, I have a Facebook group that I set up specifically for teachers and administrators, and I provide regular trainings in the form of videos, and some of my podcasts are on there, and also PDFs on social emotional learning, so that you can get your feet wet there. And the children's program, Deep Learning at Home, is free right now, since it's still the pandemic. So that is available on my website. And they're 20-minute videos, which I spoke about already with the affirmations. So yeah, parents can sign up for that for free, or for teachers or anybody really.
Wonderful.
So those are the things that I have.
We'll share those links there. And so when people are seeing SEL as an acronym, it's meaning the social and emotional learning, the social learning about getting on with other people and how we do that, and the emotional learning about our own emotions and other people's emotions, how to regulate our own
emotional
emotions.
Intelligence. You may know it by that name, emotional intelligence.
I just wanted to make sure people understood what we were talking about with
No, I understand. It's becoming more popular here, and it's all through the US. It is very common, but even in Canada, not everyone knows SEL. So sorry if I went on about the acronym. That's not wise.
No problem. So you've got a last question for everybody, haven't you? What's that last question? It's around
my last question. Oh, yes. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you see is your biggest need for learning social and emotional learning, SEL? What's your biggest need? And the B part of that question would be, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the need for your youth or your children or your family to learn those skills that we were talking about today? And I have a little freebie.
Absolutely. So what's your free offer today? What's your freebie today?
Yeah, my freebie is the first 2 schools that contact me, I can do a free 45 to 60-minute webinar in social emotional learning for you, for the staff.
Wonderful. That sounds absolutely amazing. And contact details are on the bottom of the screen here, and also in the link there. So if you're wanting to be one of those first 2 schools, jump on in there and talk with Margaret. She is doing this right around the world. I know she's been working with teachers in quite a few different countries, and she's absolutely amazing. So there we go. Thank you very, very much, Margaret, for sharing this stuff with us today, and for us being able to have a conversation that went beyond a few questions, and to explore some of this stuff in action. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But it is so worth it. So thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing.
Always such an enriching experience to have these conversations with you, Cathy. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you.